Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Agti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
In this episode, Trishul and Aaron talk about the things they consider at the beginning of the year. They double-check savings rates based upon raises and current 401k limits, and they evaluate the exercise of ISOs. They also evaluate many age-based topics, such as RMDs, QCDs, Medicare, and Social Security. But consider your big rocks first. It doesn't have to be a New Year's resolution, because a new habit can start at any time. So what boulders have you been neglecting lately? And now onto our conversation.
Hi, my name is Aaron Agti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening.
Great to be here as well. So in the beginning of the year, we as financial advisors have a few things that we look at for our clients and ourselves. We have a short little checklist, and a lot of these you can find online, but just to make sure that as tax laws get updated, as contribution limits get increased, that we're making all these little changes from year to year to help make sure that we always stay on track. Because these are really small marginal changes, but if you forget to make them, then over a year, 2 or 3, it can start to add up. So today we're going to talk about some of the things we look at, but also some things that we personally do that are more coincidental at the beginning of the year. It doesn't have to happen at the beginning of the year. And this is that like, I don't like using the phrase New Year's resolution because I feel like that's a loaded phrase and almost setting yourself up for failure. But if you're trying to adapt a new habit or behavior change, the beginning of the year is just as good as any other time of year. So we're going to be talking about some of the things that we've done with that kind of not quite New Year's resolution, but something that we're trying to do for our own lives as well. So, Trishul, going back to that like checklist of things advisors talk to their clients about, what are some of the first things on your list at the beginning of the year that you want to just double check with clients to make sure either, yes, we're still fine from last year, or we need to make this small tweak?
Right. So one of the big things we want to think about is how much do we plan on putting away into savings for the year at a high level? And that's just a big ballpark number. It's like a target that we want to meet based upon all the income that's going to happen over the year. And it does make sense to do it at the beginning of the year because, again, the tax year kind of resets and it gives us opportunities to take advantage of things. So it's a period where we can kind of just set a high level target and then just inch our way to it throughout the year and then do some cleanup at the end of the year. So now is a good time to do that planning to make sure we're on board. And the reason I talk about the savings rate is that's one of just the big knobs we need to think about of if we can get that savings rate to a rate that's sensible based upon our full retirement plan. Well, that'll go a long way to meeting our long-term goals. So let's say we have this savings rate. A few things to think about. Beginning of the year, you may have received, like a bonus or something at the end of last year, or it may be coming pretty soon. I know sometimes they do take some time to get all the numbers in and get that check out the door. I actually had a friend who their bonuses came on February 14th, and it either was a very good year, Valentine's Day, or it could lead to some disappointment.
But I feel like you can't make reservations on Valentine's Day without knowing what that number is.
Right. Although hopefully you can read the tea leaves and try to plan accordingly. Yeah. But yeah, the notion is you might have a big chunk to put into play because of the bonus situation, but also you might have a salary increase to think about. And what that might mean is sometimes if we're trying to get that savings rate higher, we might have already planned to already allocate a good chunk of that increase towards some of these goals, like long-term savings for retirement, without drastically automatically increasing spending or expenses. So that once we have those high level targets, then the notion is, okay, which buckets do they go into? And probably the initial buckets that we think about are the 401k and the IRAs. And one thing to think about with the 401ks is we did talk about this towards the end of last year, where you want to set those contributions so that if you are maxing out and the upper limit change, you're going to have to make that adjustment or make sure that adjustment flows through. Like, for example, the cap last year was 19,500 and now it's 20,500 for less than 50-year-olds.
Yeah, I do the same thing, and I have those 401k numbers. Like, I double check the percentage that they're putting to their 401k. So I ask, send me your pay stub. If you got a raise, make sure we get a recent pay stub. Usually an end of year pay stub is also really great, probably for tracking purposes. So it'll have just your total income for the year, but also your bonus information for the prior year. So sometimes it's hard for people to remember exactly what their bonus or even a range is. And so if I can keep track of that for them, it's like, well, you've received a 12%, 15%, and 10% bonus over the next year, or over the last year, or last 3 years, sorry. Like, we can probably assume you'll probably get a 10% bonus. We'll use that for planning purposes. But it's like, they think they're getting a 10% bonus. Like, actually, your bonus has been like 15, 17, and 25. Like, your 10% bonus might be too conservative in that case. So, again, depending on the industry and depending on the company, sometimes the bonuses come out as new RSU grants that we want to keep track of. So I'll ask for end of year pay stub, includes RSU vesting information, includes bonus information. And then I'll double check that percentage that they're putting in the 401k, both as a function of what is their income in 2022, their salary, and what is the new contribution limit. So yeah, it's went up to 20,500 for pre-tax and Roth 401ks. But for companies that allow the mega backdoor Roth strategy, where you're doing voluntary after-tax contributions to a traditional 401k with a Roth in-plan conversion, and yes, all of those words are necessary, the limit there went up from 58,000 to 61,000. So that's the total amount that an employee could put into a 401k if the company plan allows it. I also double check their ESPP contribution and make sure that the 25,000 limit is kind of lined up with their income as well. So I'm really double checking those contribution percentages, both if we need to increase it or if we need to decrease it because their income has gone up and more than the 401k limits have gone up, that we want to make sure their savings rate, like you said, isn't going down. So if they contributed 11% to their 401k last year, and now we're only going to do 10% this year because of change in their income, we need to make sure we're saving that 1% somewhere else. So yeah, it's a combination of savings rate, but also that function of income in 2022 and 401k contribution limits in 2022.
Yeah, that's right. And there are some nuances with the IRAs. You did also mention the mega backdoor Roth. So there's the regular backdoor Roth. And, I guess the quick update right now is the tax bill is stalled in Congress. So there hasn't been any major changes. Last we heard, it was there was the potential for the mega backdoor Roth and the backdoor Roth to have limits and constraints put on, making those investment choices more constrained depending on certain situations. Again, I'm just speaking very vaguely because we don't know what's happening. And it hasn't been picked up yet this year as of, the first week or two of January. So maybe there'll be some clarity soon on what's going to happen there. But right now we're in a TBD status. Now, the scary part is it's 2022 already, so people can start executing on these things. So it would be really crazy if Congress said that what the already executed 2022 mega backdoor Roths and backdoor Roths somehow needed to be unwinded. So it's hard to say what's going to flow out of that particular concern. However, hopefully an initial bill that comes out will make it all clear. And what I'm hoping is that they'll just say any changes are for the 2023 tax year and forward, and that'll hopefully let everybody continue as if nothing happened for 2022, meaning we'll be allowed to just pretend like it's a 2021 tax rule year as regards to the mega back to Roth.
So I've actually had this conversation with a client, and I'm going to ask for your guess in just a minute because I'll share mine. So think about it, because I don't. Hopefully, my guess doesn't influence yours. But what the bills that have been proposed are looking to do is banning Roth conversions of after-tax dollars. They're not banning after-tax contributions. That'll still be there. But if we can't do the Roth conversion, the after-tax dollars really don't make any sense. If you were making an after-tax contribution, you don't get a tax deduction going in. It grows tax deferred, but it's all taxed as ordinary income coming out. You'd actually be better off putting that in a taxable investment account where you could get long-term capital gains rates when it's coming out. So doing after-tax and just leaving it there is probably worse than going to a taxable investment account. So it is the three possibilities that I have read about, and I shared this with a client, are: one, they make it banning Roth conversions of after-tax dollars on the date of the bill, or maybe the date it's announced. Like, that's unusual, but that's one possible, like as of that time. Two, they will wait. Okay, because we didn't have this in place, and we know people have already done this, we're going to wait until 2023. You can no longer do Roth conversions of after-tax dollars starting January 1st, 2023. The other possibility is they could make it retroactive to the beginning of the year. This is a possibility where they would say you can't do Roth conversions of after-tax dollars, and because there already is a process in place for doing what's called a removal of excess contribution. If you put money in a Roth IRA and then say later on you get a big bonus in the calendar year and you made too much money to be able to contribute to a Roth IRA, then there are rules in place and a method for you to take that Roth IRA contribution out. And there's a little bit of math and calculations that you have to do along with that. It's called the net income attributable. It's kind of like the growth of your Roth contribution, but just that 1 year's ineligible contribution separated from the rest of it. So you can do that math to figure out how much you can take out. So that's why I say it is possible that if they ban it, could be retroactive and say, okay, if you made a Roth conversion of after-tax dollars in January, February, and didn't get banned until March, or the law didn't come into place until March, they could make it retroactive. So I guess, what is your guess, before I share mine, of one, like, is there a possibility that I'm not considering? I guess maybe they don't ban Roth after-tax dollar Roth conversions at all. I guess that's still possible. But among the three or anything else that you want to add, what is your guess as to what they'll try to implement?
Well, I think there is a fourth that I heard rumors about, that the Roth conversions may be allowed up to a certain income limit or wealth limit or something like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Meaning you can do Roth conversions unless you make a lot of money, something like that.
Okay.
Who knows, frankly, among either all these four options or however many they are. But I'd say I'd put pretty low credence on them making a retroactive change that would affect, earlier contributions in the year or conversions in the year. It just sounds like it would create an unnecessary mess. Even though there is a path to handle it, that's usually handled on like a exception basis, not a rule basis. Whereas, creating that much employment for people needing to might be a way to stimulate the economy, but I don't know. There's better ways, I would assume. So I'd probably put a higher. Yeah.
I think when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was passed, or something like is it named the CPA Employment Act or something like that,
Right.
or the CPA Job Creation Act.
So, I'd probably put the highest gradient on the first option, having it just start for 2023. And what I'm guessing is, again, when those initial drafts come out again, assuming they pick this up pretty soon, if they have 23 in there, I'm guessing it'll likely stay with that option. They won't try to rejigger that particular parameter. So I think we'll get some direction when the first drafts probably come out for this year, and that'll give us some insight on whether it makes sense to zig or zag.
I think I agree. I don't think they would try to make it retroactive just because it would be like creating a huge unnecessary mess. And I think because the way Roth conversions are like noted on your tax return, it's kind of the whole year. My guess is they would make it start January 1st, 2023. But again, that really is a guess. So I'm not if I'm wrong, like no one gets to blame me kind of thing.
Right. Well, we're not offering tax advice either, so hopefully.
We're not CPAs, not offering tax advice, not trying to predict acts of Congress, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So, okay, that was a little detour, but a caveat, a bunch of caveats as well related to that. Now, traditionally, if somebody had earmarked to make their Roth IRA contributions or their backdoor Roths or whatnot, we might just go ahead and do them early in the year, because the notion is if you're going to do it anyway, might as well get the tax advantage sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And you get a slight benefit because your money grows throughout the year instead of waiting to the end of the year and then starting the growth rate. And, there's analysis that shows that extra year of incremental growth over time, year in and year out, does have a noticeable benefit over 30, 40 years if you keep doing this every year. So it's something to do. Now, alternatively, though, sometimes we do wait until the end of the year to make the Roth IRAs or the traditional IRAs contributions, because sometimes in a situation where maybe a client has like a variable income and they do end up getting a lot more income towards the end of the year, maybe that bonus check does come in time, or maybe it's still January and you have that bonus check for last year, you can still make 2021's Roth IRA contribution up until tax time. So if you hadn't done that because you were waiting for extra funds or waiting for more certainty on your overall income, you can still make last year's IRA contributions up until April 15th.
Yeah, I agree. It's on both those. Like if you didn't do it for 2021, you still have time. So again, that's things to check at the beginning of the year before tax time. But if you can consistently do that at the beginning of the year, you're like always getting that 1 year's extra growth each little year. That's one of those additional incremental benefits that compounds over time.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's next on your checklist of things at the beginning of the year?
Right. So, the main thing is you got your savings rate set up and you have a game plan for meeting that savings rate over the year. And then you have allocated that savings amount into the various tax advantage accounts that you are able to invest in. So that is the big thing to think about. And Aaron, you also mentioned in the past, just ISOs in January. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so this is a thing that I've written about, and I've actually sent out emails to my clients reminding them to do this. If you have ISOs in a publicly traded company that have already vested, January is usually the best time to exercise those ISOs. So again, if you have vested ISOs in a publicly traded company, you should exercise in January. What you're doing here is giving yourself kind of more flexibility throughout the year. If the stock goes down, you can wait until the last trading window of the year, it's usually November, December, whenever earnings call is, and you can sell those shares, creating what's called a disqualifying disposition. So it's no longer getting ISO status, and you've removed the AMT concern from the exercise in January. So when you exercise in ISOs, a lot of times you have AMT. If the stock goes down a certain amount, very, very roughly like a 30% drop in the stock price, the paying ordinary income on that lower price can be better than AMT on the higher price plus long-term capital gains the following year plus potential AMT credits. So very roughly, you're giving yourself more time to satisfy the 12-month holding period within the same calendar year. Because if you exercise, say, mid-year, say June, and the stock price does go down till June the following year, if you try to sell before 12 months, you've already paid AMT based on the ISO exercise the prior year. So the strategy really works best if you give yourself as much holding period time within the same calendar year. So that's why exercising ISOs in publicly traded companies tends to make the most sense in January. So this is one of the things I've kind of first day back, I email all my clients like, hey, make sure you exercise your ISOs. The second benefit is there's usually not any withholding requirements with ISOs. There is going to be a tax bill the following spring, usually to AMT, but if you exercise January 2022, the AMT tax bill probably won't be due until April 2023. You can sell the shares January, February, or March, depending on, again, trading windows usually, sell them in that first quarter of 2023 and have the proceeds to pay for the stock and still have satisfied long-term capital gains rates. So it's those two, again, it's kind of flexibility and control of timing that exercising ISOs early in the year tends to make a lot of sense. Again, if it's a publicly traded company, because you need to be able to sell the shares for either of these strategies. If it's a private company, that's a different conversation because we can't assume that you'll be able to sell the shares to either do the disqualifying disposition or generate the proceeds to be able to pay the tax bill. So that's a different conversation. But if you have ISOs in a publicly traded company that have vested, exercising in January tends to make the most sense.
Right. And of course, there is a full podcast, and you have blog posts as well, Aaron, on more details on this specific concern.
Yeah, we have an ISO university. So I think the third one I probably talked about that because it was stage of the company would have been getting to be public. And but yeah, I also, if you Google or go to my website, you should exercise your ISOs in January. There's the full explanation of how that strategy works.
Right. Another thing to think about is it may make sense to just consider important milestones that may come up throughout the year because people within your household are reaching certain ages. Just starting at the very end, age 72, is anybody hitting that? And that would trigger RMD concerns, meaning with your traditional or your IRA accounts that have matured. Once you reach age 72, you're required to take distributions from the traditional IRAs. And it's something to plan for at the beginning of the year if you know you're going to need to take out, 100,000 by the end of the year or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. You want to kind of avoid that surprise and see if you can plan it, especially if the idea if you're over 72, you're probably taking money out from different portfolios to support your lifestyle. So you don't want to get in the situation where I've taken all this much money out, generated this much taxes, and then adding the RMD on top of that, which is going to be all ordinary income at your highest marginal tax rate. If you incorporate the withdrawals from IRAs into your lifestyle, you can make sure to satisfy the RMD. For a lot of people, the way I've seen it play out, more at my prior firm, I just don't have as many clients in their 70s at my current firm. usually want to increase your monthly distribution from IRAs to satisfy the RMD this year. So you're kind of spreading out that RMD increase over the year. And this tends to line up well with getting a pay raise on your income. So as cost of living of things go up, you increase your IRA distribution. You both be able to afford, maintain the same lifestyle, but also make sure you satisfy the RMD for the year. So those tend to work in concert really well together. Of double check your RMD for beginning of the year, make that adjustment, spread out throughout the entire year instead of waiting till the end and like, oh, we forgot to take out enough this year.
Right. And then, just kind of relating to that, or like a cousin of that, 70 and a half, if you happen to turn that over the course of the year, you become eligible to make a qualified charitable distribution.
That's it. I think, can't you make a qualified charitable distribution before then?
From your retirement account?
Yeah.
Well, so that's the footnote I have here. We can probably dig into a little more of the specifics.
So a qualified charitable distribution is if you take money from your IRA and donate it directly to the charity, it is not taxable to you. Most people, you wait until they have RMDs because if they need to take money out anyways and they don't need, the law requires they take money out, they don't need it for their lifestyle, they are charitably inclined, they can donate that money directly to the charity, it satisfies the RMD, and is not taxable to them. So that's why the qualified charitable distributions tend to line up with the required minimum distribution. But I thought you could make a QCD, the qualified charitable distribution, before that. I didn't know you had to wait until that age.
So here's the distinction. So you must be at least 70 and a half at the time you request a QCD. If you process the distribution prior to reaching that age, the distribution will be treated as taxable income.
Oh. So I think, again, I'm not a CPA, and it's taxable, but you also get a tax deduction on the charitable contribution. Now, again, this plays into tax deductions of normal contributions to charity. Currently, it's 100%, or maybe that might have been last year, but it looks like the new tax bill is going to bring it back down to 50%. So I think if you did it in 2022, there are two different accounting methods, but I think it wouldn't be taxable either way. Like one is you get taxable income and then a tax deduction. So you have to kind of go through your itemized deductions. The other one is not considered taxable income. But again, that's why it tends to line up with waiting until 70 and a half anyways.
Right. And, the 70 and a half was likely a vestigial number that related to the previous RMD age of 70 and a half.
Yeah. This is where having some understanding of the history of tax laws, things start to make sense if you go back far enough, because Congress doesn't like to change things altogether. They change one little thing at a time.
Right. And the reason the QCD is sensible is you can use that to satisfy an RMD. And that's why also they're a thing to do when you reach 72.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. The 70 and a half, I'm sure, was based on the old RMD age, but they increased the RMD. They didn't increase the QCD age.
Right. So, well, there's a handful of others. Like, for example, if you're turning 70, that's the age for getting maximum Social Security benefits. So, that's just a strategy of if you hold out into your 70, you plan to live quite some time after 70, then there's a higher chance that you'll end up getting more income out of Social Security if you delay. Now, I'm saying that's a probabilistic thing. You aren't guaranteed to, because if you, just pass away at 71, then you only receive Social Security benefits for 1 year. Whereas if you had elected to start your Social Security much earlier, then you could have been receiving benefits all those times. However, if you do end up living a longer time, there's break-even analysis to figure out what makes sense for certain situations. Then, yeah, delaying Social Security benefits to 70, the current maximum Social Security benefit age, is likely to lead to a situation where you end up getting more.
Yeah, yep. And I don't think I have any clients I have one client over 70, but we've already taken care of that. So the rest of my clients that just, yes, we're planning on waiting until age 70.
Right. And then the big one before that, which you want to plan with your healthcare, is if you're turning 65, you become eligible for Medicare. So that'll be a certain transition period where you want to plan for that, if it's happening mid-year.
Yeah. That's another thing to just kind of be aware of. For most people, Medicare lines up with Social Security. So their Medicare premiums are taken from their Social Security benefit. Because it really feels like, oh, I went from working and my health insurance was taken from my paycheck to I'm retired at 65 and my health insurance is taken from my paycheck, being Medicare premiums come from Social Security. But if you are planning on waiting until age 70 to start taking Social Security, you don't need to wait until Medicare, but you will have to still make those premium payments. So planning for that is just something to be aware of if you are looking to start Medicare at 65, but waiting until 70 for Social Security.
Right. So, with Social Security, there is a pretty wide range. You could claim it as early as 62, but you won't get that high of a benefit amount. And it just kind of goes up year by year until it kind of caps out at 70, where you might get the most, assuming you live long enough to reap that benefit of waiting till you're 70. And yeah, depending on what's really important to you, meaning maybe you do need, you have some terminal condition or something and you only have a few years left. Well, okay, 62 may make sense. It's not always, straight to 70 for everybody. So it does depend on the situation, but there is a pretty wide range there to consider.
Yep. Okay. What else is on your checklist?
Well, so, just some of these ages are important to think about. I just wanted to throw one more in there because it does come into play with some of the tax strategies that we think about. And that's the 59 and a half year. If you're turning 59 and a half, you're eligible to withdraw from your IRAs without penalty. So that just may open up the ability to either have liquidity or just think about other types of strategies, given that you have access to these funds now.
Yeah, I think realistically, for most of my clients, between the year they stop working, whether it's late 50s, early 60s, and we're planning on waiting till age 70 to start Social Security, that creates a series of years where their earned income is likely to be very low, and we can actually control their taxable income pretty well. We get to decide where their income comes from to support their lifestyle. And that's might be the year we'll combine, maybe do like a Roth conversion one year, or do gain harvesting. So try and max out the 0% capital gains bucket. Or if you do some combination like Roth conversion one year or gain harvest one year, like it's hard to do those both the same year, but if you build up a big cash cushion, then you don't need to take withdrawals from retirement accounts or investments the second year, and you can do a really even bigger Roth conversion, something like that. Gain harvesting, again, filling up that 0% capital gains rate bucket, or increasing your basis on other things at lower capital gains rates than what you do if you just did everything evenly throughout the year. So that's not only a beginning of the year kind of thing, but that's something else I do look for with my clients who do get over 60, that, okay, we have some opportunities these years depending on their income.
Right. And then, there are some things to think about for some of the younger folks. For example, if you're 26, you got to somehow keep this in mind. You're an adult child and you may lose your parents' health insurance coverage under the ACA. So that's something to think about.
Okay. Anything else on your list?
And, if you did end up setting up some sort of UGMA or UTMA, these are custodial accounts for children. If they're turning 18 or 21, well, those funds turn over to your children or your adult children at this point. And technically, it's their money at that point, so that they can do whatever they want, depending on the state, I think, and the account type. That's what determines whether it's 18 or 21.
Okay. Sounds good. I know UTMAs and UGMAs are like state specific. Do you have any difference what the difference between them are?
They were just subtle differences between what can go into them. I think the UTMAs are the newer version of the UGMAs, so that there are certain benefits that the UTMAs have that the UGMAs don't, and some states have transitioned to the UTs from the UGs, and some states have not quite yet. But I think they're just kind of subtle benefits. So frankly, I don't know the specifics. We can probably put in the show notes.
The reason I asked, I thought the difference was just like which state implemented them. Like some states have UTMAs and some states have UGMAs, and whichever state you live in is the one you get. But I wasn't sure beyond that.
I know there are differences in what you can hold and stuff like that. Although I remember when I was reading about it, telling myself that's never going to be an issue, so I'm not going to memorize it. So it's probably.
I feel exactly the same way. UTMA, UGMA, use them interchangeably. No planning scenario will determine which one you need, and if there is, you can look it up at the time.
Right. Yeah. So never memorize anything you can look up in books. Said somebody.
Yeah.
At some point.
Okay. Anything else on your financial advisor beginning of the year checklist before we get to your personal beginning of the year stuff?
Well, we talked about the main things leading to, what to do about changes in cash flows or expected changes in, employer or income, for example, but also, maybe just adapting to different employer benefits, whether you have a new health plan that might mean different things, or if you changed and you have a new job, or you have new dependents and things to think about, whether that may require certain changes depending on what employer-sponsored plans you have or what private plans you have. So that's just something to think about. It's just a good time of the year to do a rough inventory, just so you're not surprised. The only other thing I'll mention with that is if you do have an FSA, that's the use it or lose it type of account for your health expenses and childcare expenses. There are grace periods with those accounts, but they expire, at the beginning of the year. And if they do, then those funds get forfeited. So it's something that you want to think about if you do have balances remaining from last year.
Yeah, the dependent daycare FSA, my wife and I ran into that very specific scenario that we just hadn't taken out the last distribution, and she got an email notification, you have to take this out to apply it against your daycare costs. So yeah, you do get a grace period there usually, and it's especially for the dependent daycare, it's something you've already paid for, and you've already saved it from your paycheck. You just need to remember to submit that distribution to take the money out.
Right.
Yeah. So on the personal side, is there anything that you have done this year that, again, not calling it a New Year's resolution, but like just things that you think about for your lifestyle that you want to share with listeners and clients?
Right. So we've talked about this in the past where it makes sense every now and then to kind of take stock of things and see if there are any areas that might it might make sense to, make some certain adjustments, always improvement, always better, and so on. And at the start of the year, you don't necessarily have to wait for the beginning of the year, or we've even mentioned in the past at the end of the previous year, making a resolution. But if you so happen to, it's not a bad time either. And yeah, for myself, I've been just kind of nudging myself into a lifestyle and a groove and a flow that kind of makes sense for me. And I think I've come a good ways, now that the business has kind of reached its own pacing, and things have kind of smoothed out with my own, personal life and my daily workflow. So frankly, I'm a question mark right now. I think I just need to to think about what happens next. How about you, Aaron?
When I my December calendar had been pretty full, and someone scheduled a time on my calendar in January. I realized, okay, now is the time I need to make sure that I don't let my January calendar get away from me. In fact, don't want my calendar throughout 2022 to get away from me. So I had been having some kind of knee problems. I've seen a physical therapist. I tore my ACL in college. I've had surgery 20 years ago, but I was just having just general stiffness. So I have a series of stretches and exercises that I should be doing to take care of my knee. And I noticed in kind of the last couple of months of last year, I just wasn't getting them done consistently. I was doing them sometimes when I could find time. And I realized that was the issue, like trying to find time to do something that was important to my health isn't going to work. So I blocked off enough time after dropping the kids off at school where that is when I do my knee exercises and stretches. And my kids went back to school beginning of the year. So I've so far I'm a week in, and I've been able to do it every morning they've gone to school. I have done my exercises after. And I do think it was that blocking out the calendar idea. It was similarly, I like to donate platelets. It's a process. We have to go to a blood and platelet donation center. It actually takes a couple hours. So usually watch a movie while you're donating. I have been doing this most of my life since I was in college, but there have been stretches where I just kind of forget to do it and realize I didn't donate platelets at all in 2021. Same thing, trying to find that day where I can go donate platelets, and it'll take several hours, and find that on my schedule. If I don't block that out early, then someone else will schedule a meeting. I'd be happy to take the meeting, but I need to kind of prioritize the things in my life that are important to me. And again, it gets back to that life planning idea, the controlling your calendar, controlling your schedule, but being intentional about it. And that's one of the things that I realized I had kind of lapsed. I had been less intentional about how I was spending my time and just kind of letting it happen to me. And so one of the things I did at the beginning of the year was, again, schedule platelet donations for I think every 2 months for the next 6 months. So I was scheduled in February, April, and June. Block out time to take care of my knee. And there's a few other things I added to my calendar, like when the kids are out of school for 3-day weekends. And do I want to take off that Friday to try and go skiing? Like things like that I have acknowledged to myself and to others that these are important to me. I want to do these things. And so I put them on my calendar and schedule them. And I've heard of, I think it was a Stephen Covey idea of like the scheduling the big rocks first before filling in your jar with pebbles and sand. And that has become pretty widely known, but like scheduling your big rocks first and making those the priorities, then everything else will fill in around that. And so that's one of the things I did at the beginning of the year is, and I've heard other people talk about that idea of like scheduling those rocks first. And that's what I don't like to consider a New Year's resolution, because you again could do this at any time. and it's more about a habit or behavior change. But for me in particular, I had to actually schedule it if I'm going to make sure it gets done. So,
Yeah.
is there anything that, I guess, is there any kind of big rock that you have that, whether it's the first quarter or half the year, that you think about?
Well, as you had said that, I started thinking back on, where I've evolved over the last X amount of years. When I started this whole transition towards, leaving the full-time career, I did have a sort of 5-year plan in my head. Hopefully more successful than some nation states have tried to pull off. But the high-level plan was, I felt a certain sense of, burnout from the standard career, where it does end up taxing a lot of time. However, I felt like there was room for productivity increases as well. It's one of those things where if you're going into an office every day, you have the commute, right, back and forth, and you might have downtime between meetings and stuff like that, where you're kind of stuck at a desk. You can't, run downstairs and, or do an errand at will. It doesn't quite make sense in those types of situations. But also the way I had this interesting analogy where I had this battery charger, this cable charger for my phone, and it over time, it just didn't start to work as well. And what I kind of noticed is when I plugged it in, after a full night, I wake up the next day and it would be still at like half charge, wouldn't reach 100% charge. So that the battery wasn't getting enough power from the charger. It was just enough to kind of keep it alive and maybe tick up very slowly.
Oh.
And that's how I feel like my weeks used to be, just enough to get by, but not enough to fully charge.
Yeah.
And then you kind of maybe catch up on the weekends, right? Then you get the better charger on like Saturday and Sunday, and you get rested up, and you get your battery back to like 80 or 90% on Monday. And then, you have your 5 days with the crappy charger, and then, and so on, right? It's not quite ideal. And when I thought about how I wanted to model my week, I think it's come close to where I'm at today. And, just very roughly, my average work day or weekday, that is, starts, you get up in the morning, spend an hour doing the let's get ready for school dance and, getting breakfast and all that ready. And then, around like 8 to 9, just get a chance to have breakfast and plan out my day. And then 9 to 10, I do my workout. And then 10 to 4, I do a solid day's work with an hour lunch, like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And it does fill up the day, and leaves my week evenings open to, pick up my daughter from daycare, have dinner, get her ready for bed. And then, maybe at night I might squeeze in another half an hour in where I just plan for the next day. Right. But, this new path that I'm on now, it feels like I'm able to use the good charger, on the weekdays. It feels like I'm able to recharge each day so that it feels sustainable. And I've also mentioned before, I look forward to Mondays now. So, when it comes to the big boulders, I think I got them in place. Now what's actually going through my mind is what other smaller pebbles can I get in there to kind of optimize this a little further.
When was the last time you went scuba diving?
I went over the summer a few months ago, I think.
Okay. Because I know that you're in Florida and that's one of the things that you like to do. When's the next time you're going scuba diving?
So I'm a bit of a baby. I like the warm water. And it's really not that cold. I just came back from the beach in Nassau, the Bahamas, and it was maybe a degree or two cold, but anybody who would be complaining about that water, I don't know. So I'm waiting for a little bit warmer weather for that, which is not too far off. I think the plan actually now is it's great for camping this time of year, so that's what we're trying to gear up for.
Okay.
Over the next few months. Yeah.
So next time we talk, you're going to let me know when is your upcoming camping trip.
Yeah, right. We do have a plan.
Okay, you do have a plan. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
we have that planned. It's in April, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the things I talk to my clients about. Like the things that you like to do. Like I like to play golf with my friends, but trying to find time in 4 calendars is really difficult. So we have to schedule a month or 2 in advance if I want to try and play golf with them. So it's January. I'm looking into March to try and find a time we can all play golf together. So
right.
Okay, well that was good. Thank you for sharing that, and I'm looking forward to hearing about more of your big rocks.
Well, I enjoyed it as well, Aaron, and you didn't really get to mention your new midlife crisis mobile.
See, okay. You know what? It's still too new. I haven't made it a big rock thing. So my for Christmas, my wife got me a 1-wheel. It's the motorized balancing board that can go. Mine can go up to 18 miles an hour, and it feels like you're sideways, kind of like on a skateboard, kind of like snowboarding. But it genuinely is just a pure toy for me, and so I haven't prioritized it yet. I haven't made it a big rock yet. So it's like I'm finding times like, I'd like to go outside for 30 minutes. I think that's been probably one of the observations I've made is at this point in my life, going on that for 10 minutes is still enjoyable. Like it's fun. So I go have 10 minutes of fun and I'm done. I come back in and go back to work or chores or kids. So
right.
Maybe I'll share more about it later.
All right. I look forward to that. 10 minutes a couple of days a week could go a long way.
Yeah. I'd actually love to hear from our listeners if anyone else has like a big rock that they have prioritized that wasn't on their calendar last year that they're intentionally making sure it gets done this year.
Right. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. And Aaron, I enjoyed the conversation, and thanks everybody for listening. If you're enjoying these conversations, do spread the word. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and has no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.